In this lesson, we're going to be looking at the Adobe Camera Raw interface and just doing a very fast review of all the assets involved in it. So once you've opened up your raw image, you'll be greeted with this user interface, and what it's used for is the main editing of your image, such as the highlights, contrast, any exposure, adjusting the lens profile, and doing a few more effects such as removing noise, etc. So let's quickly jump in from the top left. You have your main toolbar. I recommend you just go through these and practice each one just to get comfortable with the program and interface itself, but most are pretty basic, such as your general zoom tool and hand tool. You have your crop tool right here, as well as your straighten tool. And you can also remove red eye. So you could come into an eye here, just click and drag. And of course, there's no red eye on this image. So you can easily do that to remove red eye, as well as adding some adjustment brushes, etc. But that won't be covered because we're going to be doing that in the main Photoshop interface after ourselves. The next thing is the color histogram over here. Just can see where your main shadows are on the left-hand side, and the highlights on the right hand side. So currently this image is not being fully exposed to the highlights or pure white channel. Next underneath is RGB, so red, green, blue. Wherever you drag your mouse, it's just going to tell you the color which you are currently hovering over. Then to the right of that, you have the camera settings the image was taken with. So the f-stop, the shutter speed, ISO, and the actual lens. Underneath that, we have different adjustment tabs. So you have your basic, you can then have your curves, you also have some details and other ones further along. And don't worry, I'm going to be covering all those in the future lessons. Down here, we have save image. If you want to save this image straight away, or for whatever reason you want to do a different version, you can come down and click that button. You can also view in between different effects you've done. So here you can toggle between different settings. So it shows the original and your new settings. Or maybe you want to see the before and after, you can click this button here, and that will show you the before and after. You can also click and hold down to go back to single view, or just cycle through them. I'm going to remove this. And lastly, I just want to go over the different color profiles you can set up your image to be. So down here you can see I have screen. Yours may be reading something different. Don't worry. Click it, and what I currently have is just a preset open. And what I'm going to do is actually delete screen, and I'm also going to delete this other one. And what we're going to do is quickly set up some presets for future proofing your image use. So firstly, let's make a profile if you were to use this image for actual printing purposes. So you wanted to print the image at the final result. What we're going to do is make sure our space is set to Adobe RGB. We're then going to change our depth from 8 bits to 16. We're going to make sure our resolution is 300 pixels per inch. And we're going to make sure sharpen is unchecked. And then Photoshop, open in a Photoshop as a smart object, is ticked. And this is a profile which will be perfect for printing. We're then going to come into new workflow preset and save it as print. And then we have our print profile set up. What we're going to do next is make a new workflow preset called screen. And I spelled that wrong, so I'm going to redo that quickly. So we have screen. And what we're going to do is change our color space from Adobe RGB to sRGB, IEC, and then 1966 2.1. So we've got that. We're then going to make sure our depth is still on 16 bits to increase our color range that we can choose from. We're then going to change our resolution to 72 because screens only work in 72 pixels per inch resolution. We're also going to tick sharpen for screen, and we're going to leave the amount at standard. We can then update screen, and it will now be saved. And for this tutorial or lesson online, we're going to be choosing the screen preset we just made, because the end use for this image would be website use and not to be printed. So we're going to press OK. And that is all for the Camera Raw interface. What we're going to do next is actually look at how we can start editing this image and making it look really awesome.